Mr. Chairman, you're live.
Good morning, members of the committee. Your next agency for consideration is 077, Book 077, Enterprise Technology Services. I believe the CIO and Director of the agency, Jeff Kleins, will make the introductions.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, we are very grateful for this opportunity to present to you our budget asks for the next biennium. Grateful for the little bit of a late start, but we'll get you caught up in time. By way of introduction, my name is Jeff Kleins, Director of ETS, State CIO. Been with the state for just over a year now. I come with about 8 years of public sector service, most recently as a CIO for the state of South Dakota. But I come with over 25 years of technology experience, but also grew up in a house where my dad was a CIO in tech, and so we were around computers. With that experience, I developed a lot of passion for technology. Another one of my passions is around service. And what I try to do is make sure that technology is a service and an enabler for the business to do what they do best every day. And the way I specifically leverage that is I want ETS and technology to enable the agencies to do what they do best every day, and that's serve the people of Wyoming. That is a passion of mine, and I think you'll see and reflected in our budget asks that theme of trying to be that service agency. With me today, I have two amazing women that we could not have done this without their leadership. I'm not sure how we were able to convince my deputy, Erica Legursky, to leave the governor's office after so many years, but she comes with decades of experience within the state leadership, over 10 years of experience in technology and finance leadership. When I joined ETS, I had one of my first tasks was to fill my leadership team. I had a vacant deputy and CFO position. I don't know if, well, I'm pretty sure Erica would agree with me. One of her best accomplishments to date was to hire an amazing CFO. Somebody that has years of experience within the state. Erica knew the type of challenges we would face in our budget management, and then she went and found an amazing person. Kristen comes with years of experience as the CFO for DWS, right? And both of these ladies' experience in the agencies, in the business, really helped me bring this vision of that agency service to life. So I am eternally grateful for their partnership and their support in generating this budget. I did want to talk a little bit about who ETS is. I know a lot of this committee is new. I will skip over the organizational structure a little bit, but I did want to talk a little bit about our mission and who we do. Our mission, a little bit of a play on words for ETS, I say, is excellence through service. And that's bringing that in there. We were established in 2012 by the 56th Wyoming legislature, and with a specific mission to be able to serve those enterprise technology needs. TRP, websites, applications, and also to be that governing body to make sure that standards are established and followed. Again, I'm going to go a little bit fast through here. There is a PowerPoint slides with some talking points that I would say be worth your review if you want to understand how ETS is structured at this point in time. Going on, I do want to talk a little bit about our key challenges and our strategic focus. The cybersecurity threat landscape continues to evolve. And so a lot of our budget asks will also go into the ways we're trying to continue to evolve our protection to make sure that we are protecting the data that is entrusted to the state by the citizens. To me, that's a passion is mine because, you know, as we've talked about, or as people aware, once that breach happens, it's really hard to make somebody whole there. Another thing, succession and talent retention is a risk that we have. I just want to put my testimony, my support for the ANI's ask and the governor's ask for moving the salary tables from 2022 to 2024. While it won't solve all the woes and stuff, it will go a long distance to help me to be able to find and retain the talent necessary to fulfill the mission that we have in ETS. Again, as we go through, another challenge that we have is our software and asset management. This will go into our TRP discussions as far as making sure that we have proper software that is current and be able to be patchable. Again, that goes into the cybersecurity world, and then technology as far as the hardware, computers, laptops and stuff to make sure those are current and supportable as well. The older they get, as we talk about the total cost of ownership of computers in TRP, I've always fascinating that only about 48% of the cost of the computer, the actual buying it from the store, goes into what actually represents the total cost of ownership. The support and stuff like that goes into it, and we'll talk more about that in the 277 budget in TRP. And then last, in the opportunity and strategic focus is just around that agency coordination. I believe technology needs to be a strategic partner with agencies. We'll talk a little bit more about that during some of our asks. With that, Ms. Chair, I'd like to turn it over to our CFO, Kristen Burkhart, who will go through the budget asks line by, or priority by priority with the committee.
Ms. Burkhart, I'll have you go ahead and proceed, but I will ask that you go in page order rather than in priority order, just so that we can all track and the public can track a little better.
Absolutely. Happy
Thank
to
you.
do that. I prepared for both, so we're
right.
good to go.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. My name is Kristen Burkhart. I serve as the CFO for ETS. I've been here for a year. The three of us have been here for a year. The exception requests you'll hear today, they're all going to focus on one central purpose: keeping the state of Wyoming's technology secure, stable, and reliable, so our employees and the agencies that we support have what they need to do their jobs and serve Wyoming citizens. We appreciate your consideration of these requests, and I will let you know, I am not a technical person, so I am going to present each of these exception requests in as non-technical terms as I can, and then Director Kleins will be able to answer any technical questions you may have. So, yeah, you don't want me to answer your technical questions. So, all right, so let's start on, hold on, I got a little out of order here. We are going to start with our first division. Our first exception request is actually on, hold on, I got these out of order. Hold on a second. Did I not print the right page? Oh, there we go. Okay, Division 1000. We didn't go over the funding, and that's okay. I'll briefly explain some of each of these divisions really at a high level. So absolutely. If you'll turn to page 19, you'll find our first division, which is Division 1000. Yep.
Mr. Chair, can I take a step back real quick to explain some of our divisions? Because Kristen did remind me there's some valuable information I did want to share. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the funding structure for ETS is a little bit more complex. We have actually three different funding mechanisms. So ETS is appropriated general funds, and that's what you'll hear when we're talking about a Division 1000 series. Those are services that are generally funded. When I talk about these services, we also call them core services. There's going to be things like cybersecurity, Google licenses for email and collaboration, things like that that are generally funded. For agencies that are federally funded, we do cost recover some of those through a swipe cap, which Mr. Hibbard could talk about if we really need to. The second area, and we'll talk about this, is Division 3000 or 3000 series funds. Those are what we call our internal service funds. This is money that we are appropriated a spending authority. I always look at it as a credit card spending limit. The money or the general funds that pays for this are appropriated to the agencies in their 400 series budgets, and then they pay the bills. And things like this we'll see would be things like servers, storage space, cloud services. We have a big ask in there for additional cloud services. This, for us, is just spending authority. The agencies are the one that are incurring the cost. This is just a centralization of that service, so we can hold the master contract. We will get, the company would bill us, and then we would then turn that and split it into the agencies and bill them. So, and then the last one is our 5000 series, Division 5000 series, which would be school foundation funds, which would, fund like network connectivity and stuff for schools and things. And Kristen will go into the details. So thank you, Mr. Chair, for allowing me that.
Page 19, actually, our first exception request starts on page 20. So that exception request is for a department-wide position alignment. You all were provided a handout that is called Department-Wide Position Alignment Priority Number 1. That handout lists out, it's like a, lists out all the positions, where they're currently located division-wise, where we're proposing to move them, and the dollar amounts and which funds those are impacting. And that's just a little more detail so you can see what's going on. But to give you some background,
Mr. Chairman, for members of the committee, this is handout number 79. It's a one-page handout, legal size.
perfect, thank you. Thank you, Don. So this, you're going to see this request over multiple divisions. The request for Division 1000 is for $1,428,918 in general fund. This is to correct outdated funding allocations, so these positions accurately reflect the work that those employees are actually performing today. When Director Kleins, myself, and Erica arrived at ETS a little over a year ago, one of the first things we discovered was there was some cleanup that needed to happen. We found a lot of things that we've changed how our services are, what services and how we're providing those services to agencies have changed over the years. But the funding for expenditures and salaries have not been properly adjusted to reflect those changes, which impacts how we bill agencies and how we budget. And so we need to move some of these positions around to make sure that, one, we're appropriately and transparently reflecting our budget and where those jobs are, but also that we are able to create or develop those enhanced service rates that we bill to agencies in a transparent, accurate way. And so we've already started taking steps to make corrections. Some of you may know we're in the process of having an audit done with the Department of Audit, who's going to help us look at some of these things and make a plan to help fix some things. But in the meantime, we also need to fix some of these positions to get those things corrected into the right place. Yes?
Complete.
So they just reached out earlier this week. We've provided them all the information. They plan to finish all the planning here this month, and then hopefully we'll start the audit in January, after the first of the year.
Okay, and typically for an agency of your size, what's the anticipated completion time?
I'm not sure we know that. I don't know the answer to that. We can certainly reach out to them and just ask them.
Yeah, if you could follow up with
Yeah.
us with an email later
Sure.
on, let us know when you're anticipated to be done with that audit.
Absolutely, we
Thank
can
you.
do that. So this isn't adding new positions or anything like that. I just want to make that clear. We're just trying to get positions aligned properly in the budget. So the governor
Ms.
does.
Burkhart, one
Yes.
moment, please. Mr. Hibbard?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, in support of ETS. And just a really quick educational opportunity. You heard Director Kleins talk about the 400 series where ETS does the billing. And you've heard him say that there's the statewide cost allocation, the 300 series, which the state budget department does the billing and collects that revenue. And then the federal funds, naturally, are the federal funds. So in this case, the simple thing that's happening is ETS is no longer going to be appropriating that transfer through their 400 series. They're asking it to come over to the general fund side. When it comes over to the general fund side, then it lands in the state budget department, and then we cost allocate it and spread it across all the agencies in the enterprise. So technically, everybody's paying their fair share still here. It's just accounting movement. But the cost allocation will recover that, as well as all the other general funds within ETS.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.
Mr.
Please
Chairman,
proceed.
if I might add one other thing, just as an example, you've probably heard of the mainframe, and Director Kleins can speak more to that if you want. That mainframe is set to sunset as a legacy system, most likely in April. And so we have several staff that are allocated to that mainframe and expenditures. Since that will be sunsetting, we have to adjust how those folks are doing job duties, but also how they're funded, because we can no longer recover their salaries and expenses through the mainframe rate that we've developed. So that's just one example of some of these position moves, if that makes sense.
This mainframe, are we using it? Are these personnel already doing jobs elsewhere, or are they committed to this mainframe?
Mr. Chair, so yes, we have, was it 6 positions? So we have 6 positions that are tied to the mainframe rate. Majority of their roles are on mainframe. Majority of those positions are in what we call our Network Operations Center, and they do a lot of mainframe print jobs. They work 24/7 monitoring the environment and things like that. So as the mainframe is sunset, their positions would be reallocated and moved into other areas where that work is no longer needed, but we have a lot of other work that they can do in monitoring and delivering other networks, the network operations and stuff also monitors the networks uptime throughout the state to identify of downtimes, things like that. So it would just.
To your knowledge, those 6 are not currently doing those tasks. They are working on the mainframe.
The majority of their work is mainframe work, yes.
And the mainframe will go away in April?
It better.
It better. Well, just for the sake of us new people here, what function does the mainframe serve right now?
So, Mr. Chair, the mainframe right now, and for those that may not know, mainframe computers, most states still have a fairly large mainframe. It was the primary major computing power in the 1980s, 1990s, going into 2000s type of stuff. They're very large, very expensive, very complex compute systems. Right now, Department of Transportation has 90+% of the mainframe, a lot of things tied to that. So driver's licensing and some motor vehicle licensing reporting currently run through the mainframe there. And as they turn on the new WiMAX driver's licensing system, that's what will drive the retirement of the mainframe system.
Thank you. Ms. Burkhart, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The governor does recommend approval of this exception request, and with that, we'll stand for any other questions.
Seeing none, please proceed. Sorry.
Thank you.
Representative Sherwood.
Thank you. Thank you for being with us today. And yeah, I appreciate your focus on service and your enthusiasm for the work that you do. My question in regards to the position-wide, department-wide realignment in terms of where those fundings are coming from. So we see, a net cost to general funds of around $1.2 million. And just wondering, can the historical revenue sources that have paid for these services sustain these operations as originally envisioned when ETS became its own agency and when you guys were originally set up? Just wondering if you can speak to the allocation of moving more to the general funds, but then how the cost allocation is going to work across agencies. Thank you.
Mr. Chair. So make sure I understand correctly. So, and please correct me if I'm not addressing this correctly, but so the one example is the mainframe, the positions, that's the lion's share of this ask is moving those positions away from mainframe because we'll no longer be charging DOT for the mainframe. And so all those dollars that support the salary and the technical environments in which the mainframe, we were not going to build those, so we won't have a way to recover that money anymore from that way. And that's why, so we're moving that from the old legacy funding model to ask for the general funds to support those positions.
Thank you. Yes, follow up, and this may be for Director Hibbert as well. I mean, are we also looking at what does this realignment do to funding sources 2 years out, 5 years out, 10 years out? Is it sustainable?
Mr. Chairman, that's an excellent question. And one of the things is it's easy to be distracted by funds distribution, but funds distribution is very important. Funds distribution is broken out this way. You have a general fund appropriation, that's clear, it's a general fund appropriation. And then you have hundreds, if not thousands, of special revenue sources that agencies use for their support of their world, which we'll do a cost allocation to. And then you got the federal dollars, which is pretty clear, federal funds with the federal requirements. So the statewide cost allocation, the mission associated with that is to make sure we recover the proper amount of money for the administration of government to those special revenue sources. It might be game and fish, it might be highway funds, a board, a commission. All that is analyzed. So the state auditor's office, the state budget department, risk management, all these are sources of administrative costs that ultimately we clear to the funds distribution, so everybody pays their fair share. It's very robust, it's very complicated. We have the Office of Health and Human Services approval processes that we have to go through on our methodologies of distribution. But the end result is, in this case, would be that while ETS used to bill these and the agencies would pay from their special revenue or their federal funds, now what's happening is the state budget department is going through the cost allocation to bill these agencies their special revenue and their federal funds. But imagine that you got an agency that's 100% generally funded and it's not an administration function. Then that credit is given to the general fund, meaning we don't bill the general fund for general fund services. It would just be moving the money from the right to the left. So the statewide cost allocation, again, is focused upon recovering a fair share of funding for the support services that we provide through ETS or the state budget department to those special revenue fund sources and the federal funds. Very dynamic, and you heard me testify yesterday. When I took over, we were collecting about $12 million a year. Now we're collecting $24 million a year. And it's very, very helpful that ETS and the state budget having this really good relationship, because we were able to accomplish that cost allocation. So when I spoke earlier, what we're saying here is that the shift from the other fund services, the 400 series that once was in place, is now shifting over to the general fund, but that general fund share is going to be cost recovered. So whoever has special revenues like YDOT or a board will have, they'll pay their fair share. And when we go through this conversation throughout the budget for the next month, when you see the 300 series, you'll see those 300 series numbers change. That is because we're addressing the cost allocation. And the cost allocation, and this is the last thing I'll say, is it's a 2-year look back. We look back 2 years for actual expenditures, what ETS actually expent, what the state budget department actually expent. And then we go through this very robust process of allocating that to those special revenue sources. In that vein, remember when we were in 2020 and we were cutting budgets because we had a general fund shortage? We did not cut the special revenue budgets because those are fees predicated on their own services. So that was a boon to them then, but there is an expectation now that the special revenue agencies do pay their fair share of the administration costs of state government. So when you move this from ETS's world on the 400 series to the general fund side, then you put it in my hands to go out and recover those costs on a fair basis.
Thank you very much. I mean, yeah, this is a big shift, and I do think it is the right direction. I just want to make sure that we're aware, or maybe being flagged, when is it that we're losing access to maybe non-general funds through the cost allocation, or when we're able to leverage more of the non-general funds. And so I do think this is just sort of our JAC needs to sort of be aware and stay on top of this conversation as this is implemented. If we can be flagged of anything of like, this is working well, or oops, we're relying more on the general fund than we anticipated moving forward, that would be great. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I think that's paramount that we have that conversation, because when we start talking about some of the other elements within ETS's budget, circuits and other services that they provide, and a necessity for us to recover those administrative costs across the expanse of the enterprise, ultimately that's going to have an impact on the upward pressure of the statewide cost allocation bill that the agencies are expected to pay. It's going to go up. But you heard the state auditor's office, they're decreasing theirs by that $1 million. That's going to have a negative influence or positive influence because it can less bill to the other agencies. But all said and done, the statewide cost allocation is that methodology that we balance the administrative costs of government, including ETS and my department, to the agencies that are receiving those goods and services. Agencies receive goods and services from the state budget department. Agencies receive goods and services from the state auditor's office. We want to make sure that those special revenue funds pay for those in a fair, allocable way. And it's governed by the Federal Office of Health and Human Services. So there's a federal role in that as well.
And Mr. Hibbard's version of a cage fight. Representative Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question on like cost analysis as far as getting 40 years out of a mainframe versus moving all the data to like cloud services with monthly subscriptions. Is there cost savings having the liability of the data storage with other companies and they're updating the technology regularly versus us owning another smaller mainframe ourselves or something like that?
Director Klein?
Mr. Chair, thank you. So Representative Smith, great question. So we've been on the mainframe, but there's actually been multiple mainframes. So we've purchased, and I can't remember how many years ago we actually moved it from one we own to one that is managed by a third-party company. The greatest risk and difficulty in mainframes is finding the skill to be able to manage and maintain it. It's a dying breed of technology that is very few and far between to find the technology experts to maintain it anymore. And so that's the risk with mainframes and why the primary driver for most states moving away from mainframes is that lack of talent. Another big industry that uses mainframes, insurance and banking. Speaking from my prior experience, State Farm, goes and partners with universities to teach the technology, but then they hire people straight out of the school for, salaries far above what states can pay to be able to maintain that mainframe. So that's even a challenge for, for-profit companies to be able to find that and maintain that talent to manage the mainframes.
Follow-up?
So no cost savings, just convenience.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Ms. Burkhart, please continue. Back to the cage fight.
Well, I don't want to be part of the cage fight, but okay. With that, I will just give you, Mr. Chairman, an update. Erica was able to email the Department of Audit while we were chatting. They said once we get through the planning, it'll take 2 to 3 months to get the audit completed. That may adjust just a little bit depending on what sort of testing they need to do. So once we've gotten through the planning, I'll be sure to email you all with what the plan is and the anticipated timing.
Good. Thank you.
Okay. With that, Mr. Chairman, we can proceed forward to priority number 3, which you can find on page 22. This request ensures reliable communication for state employees, agencies, and the citizens we serve by continuing funding for the statewide messaging system, which is used by 30 agencies, including WYDOT, LSO, the Governor's Office, and ETS. We are requesting a total of $288,743. This will be split between 2 divisions. What you see here is a general fund ask of $184,807, and we'll see the other request in our internal service fund division. Agencies, on the other side, when we bill it through the Division 3000, we then bill that through an enhanced service rate to agencies for their consumption of text messaging. Again, this is not an expansion of services. It simply supports the hosting, security, maintenance, and operational costs required to keep this essential communication system running. Agencies rely on this platform to issue emergency alerts, like WYDOT uses it for road closure notifications and those sorts of things. We share public updates, the LSO posts about legislative hearings, those sorts of things, and we also use it to coordinate internal communication. The governor does recommend approval of this request as submitted, and will stand for any questions.
Any questions on priority number 3? Seeing none, please proceed.
Perfect. All right, I'll turn your attention to page 23, where you're going to see priority number 6. We have provided a handout on this particular exception request as well, just detailing the positions that we are proposing to change. This is a request for $349,971 in general fund to reclassify 3 existing positions so ETS can better support agencies statewide. The amount reflects the difference between the current classification and the proposed updated classification needed to match the work that these folks will be doing. And you can see that on the handout we've provided. All those calculations were done following the standard state HR classification and compensation guidelines. And I should have said at the beginning, this exception request is for business relationship management, or we call it BRM implementation. BRM is a role within state government and IT organizations, and they're critical for aligning technology investments with agencies, missions, and public outcomes. It's more than just a liaison or a business analyst, and it definitely is not just a help desk support or a technician that's working on your computer. BRMs operate at a strategic level. They're guiding how technology can enable and transform government services. They serve as trusted advisors and value creators who translate the agency's technology needs into enterprise solutions. It ensures that limited resources deliver measurable impact and help shape long-term direction across the organization. Because this work requires broad authority, cross-agency influence, and an enterprise-wide perspective, BRM positions must function at a senior or executive level. From this position, BRMs can effectively champion statewide priorities, drive transformational initiatives, and ensure technology decisions are aligned with mission outcomes and responsible stewardship of public resources. And with that, Governor,
Thank you for the permission. I'll take it.
Mr. Chairman, we'll stand for any questions on that one.
Questions
My
on priority number 6? Okay, I'd like to move on, but
Yep.
I do have some questions for the director about the senior and executive level being necessary to accomplish this. How are you doing it right now? And what are the encumbrances that you're running into that this change would solve?
Mr. Chair, so to be blunt, we're not doing it right now. We don't interface with agencies very much in a strategic planning and thought process stuff. We will take requests from agencies and we'll partner with them ad hoc through different ways. We'll have our agencies will reach out to their tech guy who might be a server administrator or something else like that and say, hey, help me figure this out type of stuff. But we're not having intentional strategic technology discussions on a regular basis with agencies. And this is very much so a passion project of mine. I implemented a similar structure in South Dakota, and we broke every state agency up into one of 5 different industry-aligned things, and then brought in a senior executive level person to act as, I call them kind of a pseudo-agency CIO, where they're focused on the technology stack. There's all the applications that they're doing, and they're looking intentionally for how can we find synergies between different agencies and consolidate application spend and find efficiencies. So if like a Department of Health is looking for this application, they can say, hey, another agency over here has something that might meet those needs. Let's see if we can do it without getting another application stack and things like that. So they facilitate a lot of those cross-agency discussions. They look strategically at the application portfolio. They would be ones that the agency could reach out to and say, hey, I want to do this. How can we do that the most effective way possible, to look at that strategic advisor? So myself, a few others within ETS can also do that, but when we have 80 agencies and stuff, it's really hard to be able to develop the relationships to understand where agencies are going to make sure ETS is aligned for those. Another thing to say is, you might want to say, is 3 enough? No, but this is a step in the right direction. Knowing how sensitive we are to growing government and things like that, I did not want to come and ask for additional FTE. So I looked internally and says, how can I make better use of the FTE that has been allocated to us? And so this ask simply came from that, saying, let's take existing FTE, adjust the salaries up into the area where it's, I feel it's needed to have the impact that I want to have, and then just ask for the funding to adjust that.
So, Director, with your experience with South Dakota, are you able to give us any kind of ROI information on this investment to have these positions?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, thank you for the question. So I can speak in terms of the relationship. So South Dakota centralized their IT back in the 1990s. And I kind of always said they over-centralized. They took all IT out of the agencies where there was no strategic planning. And what that led to is a lot of pervasive issues with what we called it our brittle list. 70% of the state's applications in South Dakota were at risk of failure immediately type of stuff because there wasn't intentional strategic planning to keep those current, to keep them updated, to keep them, secure type of stuff. So we moved that back, a little bit of that centralization back to that agencies to develop that relationship to do that strategic planning. So a lot of the ROI is having that relationship close to the agencies where they feel like they're not trying to do technology alone. Or for me, in a worst case, they're relying on a third party to drive their technology strategy rather than somebody from the state. A vendor, mom, or, a cousin down the road or something that may not understand technology at an enterprise level, driving the strategic values. And so I've had a lot of conversations with agency directors in South Dakota that said this was the greatest value to them from a technology perspective that they've ever seen, because they felt like they finally had somebody that was interested and invested in their business processes and bringing technology to them rather than waiting for the agency to come to the central IT shop to say, hey, can I do this type of stuff? So I hope that answered a little bit on the ROI question.
How many agencies does South Dakota have, and how many of these BRMs do they have?
So South Dakota has, I want to say I can't remember off the top of my head, about 20 agencies. And we split them into 5 different things. So every BRM handled between 3 to 4 different agencies and things like that. So this again is this ask is just a step in the right direction to say, can we make the impact that I want to have in having that strategic relationships with agencies to be able to implement this? And then if it's successful, then we can say, what would it take to be effective with the 80 agencies that we have now? Also from the 3, we have big agencies and we have small agencies. So we would align these to those industries and say, I want somebody to tackle, DFS and Department of Health or some, those service agencies. And then, please also work with these agencies, but their primary focus would be on the large agencies. And then their secondary focus would be on the smaller agencies to do that. And then we would also take some of this on the executive things where I would work with different agencies at this level and stuff as well, where we'd spread that responsibility out.
So include yourself, so this would give you 4 basically.
Well, myself, Erica,
So 5 or
volunteers,
6.
so, yeah.
But ultimately, to be where South Dakota was, it would take 20 people doing this.
I think the number of agencies that we have are still fit within, so in South Dakota, they have Department of Labor and Regulation, which has a lot of boards underneath of it, where our boards are separate agencies, where you could have one person that could do 15 different things looking at different boards. So the scale, I don't think we would need to get to 20. I think if we had 5 to 6 dedicated 100%, we could have a substantial impact on the agencies. And one of the discussions I'd love to have with the agencies is just managing their technology portfolios a little bit more intentionally, especially the applications where a lot of tech spend goes into an application stack. And how effective are we at those? I don't have a lot of insight into that at this point in time. And this is what I want this group to be able to do, is drive in and understand the agency's technology portfolios so we can have more intentional discussions on where are we at, what are the risks and things like that. We usually get involved when something becomes like the Department of Corrections offender management system, which will be an ask here. We get involved when it becomes a crisis to be able to manage things like that. And I'd like to be more proactive than reactive in that approach.
Mr. Richards, you got that 3 today and 6 in the future. Okay? And that's my version of a cage fight. So.
Awesome.
Ms. Burkhart, please continue.
Mr. Chairman.
One moment, please.
Yes,
Senator Larson, please.
Mr. Chairman. So I guess the idea is that 3 positions that are currently working certain tasks are going to be moved up. So what do we do with the tasks they're doing now? Are they still doing those?
Mr.
Or
Chair.
are we going to be asking for more on?
Senator Larson, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Larson, great question. I should have brought this up. So these are vacant positions. When we look at our vacancies, I specifically held these back because I didn't want to do it. So these would be, we would reclass the vacant positions and then we would post them for interview and hire. So They are in our our business management office division or project management office. So I would steal from them the resources there to be able to fill that need. Director or Deputy?
Deputy Director, please, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, just to add in on that.
Welcome to JAC, by the way.
Thank you, sir. Glad to be here. Mr. Chairman, just to tag in on that. So in the vacancy report that you guys got, what we did was to try and note those positions that we held back that were either part of our priority number 1 or part of our priority number 6 that we had purposely held as vacant. We had gone through the reclassification process with HR, but being in this committee, I know that there are several times that there's the cart before the horse, and we didn't want to, we'd gone through that reclassification, we've had the approval of HR for those, but we have held those as our vacancies. Sorry, Mr. Chairman. We have held those in our vacancies so that if they get approved, you'll see those listed on our vacancy report. We just kind of label the priority 1 or priority 6 that's tied to those vacancies.
Follow up, Senator Larson? Okay. Deputy Legursky, the vacancy report, these positions, these 3 positions, what's the length of time they've been vacant?
Mr. Chairman, let me grab that really quick.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Representative.
Thank you, Representative Sherman.
Mr. Chairman, according to the vacancy report, it varies. One of the positions has only been open a month, the other 32 months, and everything sort of in between there. So it does seem like this has been a strategic decision to hold these open.
Right, thank you. Ms. Burkhart, please continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With that, we can proceed to page 25 for priority number 7. This priority is for application firewall and load balancing. This request protects state employees. It supports agency operations and safeguards citizens' services to replace the state's aging firewall and load balancing infrastructure, which will reach end of life in January 2027. We are requesting $743,524 in general fund to ensure Wyoming maintains the critical technology that defends state systems from cyber threats, keeps online services stable, and preserves federal security compliance. The firewall is, so I'm going to give you a little analogy since I'm not technical. So the firewall is what you could call the state's digital security guard. And the load balancer is the traffic controller that prevents slowdowns and outages. Together, they keep websites, applications, and essential services secure and available for agencies, employees, and citizens.
Welcome to the cage fight, Ms. Burkhart. Well done.
The governor does recommend approval of this, and with that, we'll stand for any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions on this priority? Seeing none, please continue.
Very good. We're going to proceed forward to priority number 8, which is on page 26. This is for Google licenses and automation. This request ensures state employees have the essential tools they need to serve Wyoming by continuing funding for the state's Google Workspace platform. We are requesting $197,877 in general funds to maintain the email, collaboration, file sharing, and communication tools that every agency relies on daily to process benefits, respond to citizens, manage field services, support public safety, and coordinate statewide work. This is not an expansion of services. It simply keeps the core tools running, including an automation component that securely manages accounts, supports HR and audit needs, and reduces the manual workload for ETS staff. The governor does recommend approval of this exception request.
Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Here we go, back to my favorite topic, Google versus Microsoft. Could you perhaps give us an idea of relative cost? Is one system, is one enterprise more expensive than the other, and how much so?
Director?
Mr. Chair, thank you for that question. There's a lot that goes into the discussion of the discussion between Microsoft and Google. If you look just at a high level, Google's substantially cheaper than Microsoft. What we pay and what Microsoft licenses are, Microsoft's about twice as expensive at that level. But you have to expand to understand everything else that goes into that. And I've gone back, now I'll tell you, a lot of this data that I'll talk about now is a 24-hour back of the napkin type of thing. I would love to have more time to dive in to develop a better report for this committee. I think a lot of discussion goes into what we can do there. With the Google environment, a lot of these costs, especially these, are based on the state processes. So this is a license expansion. So we have about 12,000 state licenses, 11 to 12,000 licenses for Google. Well, we have 8,000 state employees. So why the add-ons? It's like we keep licenses or we keep users active after they leave. And some of it's just the agency business process. I use Kristen as an example. She left the state when did a stint in a non-for-profit for a while, and then we stole her back and somehow convinced her to come to ETS. But when she came back, her DWS account was still active. And so it had been there, was it 3 years, 5 years? And stuff like that, where we were paying the full license cost for those 5 years for it not to be used. Again, that goes into a business process of when the agencies say, yes, you can archive that. We also keep emails indefinitely, basically. I know there's specific retention policies and we're working with the archivists to develop more stuff, but this also represents an expansion into archive licenses where we currently have 20,000 archive licenses, which equates to about $400,000, $450,000 a year in archive licenses. And things like that. So when we talk about business processes in Google versus Microsoft, there's still a lot more that goes into it. Microsoft doesn't have, at least to my knowledge and understanding, a way where we could keep those email boxes live indefinitely for the duration that Google does. So the cost analysis is very rough. Now, when we go and look at the number of exception requests that are coming to this committee for Microsoft licenses, and again, we've had a lot of perpetual Microsoft licenses in the agencies for a long time. And now that we're pushing and asking agencies to do an Office 365 from that cybersecurity perspective, we're starting to see how many users are using both Microsoft and Google, which I think goes to the root of your question. And based on the back of the napkin, we're talking and we're looking at between 60 and 70% of state employees having both Google and Microsoft. So there's a very valid question that I think we need to dive into is, do we need to evaluate and say, what should we be doing from a strategic perspective of the state? Because if 70% also need Microsoft to do their day-to-day work, is that a duplicative cost?
Follows, Vice Chairman Pendergraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I would imagine that part of the decision would come down to what other entities you interface with, and it may be just simpler to use one. So I understand that. My second question has to do with security. Do you tend to view one system as superior to the other in security, or does one system or the other tend to be attacked more routinely?
Director Klein.
Chair. So both organizations, Google and Microsoft, invest millions and millions of dollars in securing their platforms. So they both have very robust security postures, but also because they are name brand, they're both attacked significantly. I will say this, I've come from 25 years working in a Microsoft shop, so that is where my knowledge is. I know Microsoft, because Office is so ingrained with Windows and everything else, their security posture encompasses a lot more than just the Office environment. And it has a lot more of those integrations where Google has a lot of a depth of security for the Google workspace, the Drive and things like that, but it may not necessarily expand beyond that to like a Windows device and things like that. So each brings a strength. They protect their core really, really well. But I think if I had to push to answer that, I would say Microsoft has a broader security approach, understanding the whole working environment of the end user.
Vice Chairman? I'm sorry, Co-Chairman. Goodman.
So quick question, are you receiving cooperation from these agencies to go on to a single system or switch over? And then secondly, I would request that you keep the committee informed as to the cooperation of agencies to make sure that's occurring.
Mr. Chair.
Director, please.
So, yes, and you'll see like the Department of Health, I think it's the Department of Health has a fairly large ask for Microsoft Office licenses this year. They have a legacy version of, off the shelf, I think it's 2019. I'd have to go back and, I think they're currently using Office 2019 as a perpetual license. And they're working with us and following that guidance to upgrade. So yeah, we do generally see a lot of support from agencies. There are still, pardon me, there are still agencies that feel like the perpetual license saves them money in the long term because it's the one-time cost versus the subscription cost. My struggle is that we still have costs to the state to secure and manage and support that legacy software, especially when we talk, a lot of that cost is soft costs on my team to patch and to update, to maintain the licenses and things like that. So there's still a cost, and the older those get, the more cost it is to my team to maintain and support and secure those environments. So the perpetual license is the kind of that hard costs looking at things. And yes, Senator Salazar, will keep you in the loop as this conversation goes, as well as the other agencies' partnership.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Senator Grew.
I would like to follow up on that. I was going to wait and mention this later, but since you brought it up. We've had a lot of conversations today about security and things, and we can't talk about most of them, but I think, as Senator Salazar just mentioned about informing and who's involved and who's not, just for the newer members' knowledge, ETS we're the home committee for ETS. And ETS has had, to be fair, a checkered past since its inception. And it's kind of had fits and starts. And all I can tell you is the group that's sitting before us today, in my years of experience with this, in the highs and the lows, is the best equipped team to actually move us forward and to get to, we talked a lot today about what can we do? Where can we move the ball? There's a lot of agencies that don't use ETS services. In the last year, since this team has been put together, and I've worked with various members in various departments over the years, but as this team is put together, that's changing. And I'm hearing from a lot of departments, hey, we like working with these folks. These folks, hey, we're starting to see the value. We're starting to see the ROI that the chairman talks about. And so as we go through this is the place where we can move the ball. This is where we can move the needle in this security realm, where we can kind of take a hold of our own destiny as much as possible. As we saw today, there are many places we can't, but this is one where we can. Do they have all the answers? No. Do we have challenges with the budget to do all these things? Yes. So I know there's going to be some back and forth on this, but this is our committee, and I hope that we can get to a point where we can start talking to the other departments about, hey, we got to use these guys, and do so with the knowledge that it's going to get us to where we want to be in a security realm. So I just wanted to mention that. Thanks.
Director Klein, it appears that we've chosen your greatest cheerleaders in Representative Sherwood and Senator Guru to be your liaison. So I do want to make a comment about that, though. You mentioned that you'd like to get a report together on this Google versus Microsoft issue. And I would say we need that report before those two hit the floor to present your case for your funding.
Mr. Chair, I will do that. The thorough, in-depth one that in my mind, I think I would like to do long-term would be more of an RFI where we meet with the agencies and understand what's driving their business requirements. But I will definitely get a report together to them that will outline the costs that we have today and the position that we have today, so they have information for the floor.
Very good. Thank you. Yes, Representative Angelos.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director, I do have a question for you. Do we know, you said that she had an active license. I don't know the acronym, DW, I don't know what you said.
It's the Department of Workforce Services.
Okay, so you had an active license. do we know how many of these are still active across the agencies? Do you have a report from agencies that tell you that? And can we start mitigating some of these? Because that's going to clean up some funding, I imagine.
Director Klein?
Yeah, so when an employee leaves, we'll mark their account as leaving it. And then we wait for the agency to say, okay, we're finished with this account, you can now archive it. Because once it's archived, then, it's there. And if there's an account when you're like a CFO position where they may have been the recipient for contracts or bills or something else like that, agencies like to monitor that for a different period of time. What I'm working with our team to do is just how can we, and I don't want to be the nag, but say, can we just start, being agencies, are you done with this? Are you done with this type of this? Or establish standards, say, hey, we'll give you 6 months, but we need to move it off and things like that. And it will save. There are costs for the archive licenses and things like that, but it's a small fraction of what the actual full license cost is.
Follow? No? Okay. Ms. Burkhart?
Very good. All right. We're going to move on to page 26, where you're going to find priority number 9, which is for what we call centralized citizen authentication. This request strengthens security for citizens, and it supports the employees who serve them by continuing funding for the state's centralized citizen authentication system. We are requesting $620,342 in general fund to maintain the single, secure login that allows the public to access multiple agency services with one verified account rather than each agency building its own login process. Now, currently, we only have YDOT using that with their Max platform, and that Max platform they use is where people can renew licenses, order driver's records, schedule appointments, and complete tasks online without visiting the actual office. We anticipate that more agencies will adopt this statewide platform, and in the future, it will start to reduce duplication, lower technology costs, improve service delivery, and enhance security by providing consistent identity verification that protects both citizens and the state employees who handle sensitive information. And with that, we'll stand for any questions.
Any questions for this by Representative Haroldson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So looking at this, and maybe I should know this, but just right off, I can't see it. Is this completely new? Is this a revamp of? I mean, you said it's currently being used by YDOT, the theory sounds great, but is it a situation where we have a game plan for bringing more agencies on board? Or are we looking at a $620,000 appropriation with really no game plan of how we're going to bring other savings through this?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, thank you. Representative Harold, that's a great question. So it is a net new system. It was implemented specifically for the MAX. The vision and the standard for it is this would be a standard for as we adjust and update agency applications that we'd say this is the standard now from a citizen perspective. I always like to talk about the citizen experience. They don't need to remember 30, 40 different passwords for every state service that they use. So if they can have one and then remember that one, it makes it easier for the citizen, but also the vision is from a security perspective. If I'm able to track that one login to see, if that's one's compromised, then I can protect every service that's doing that. And also when authentications change out there, I can have one service that, MFA, multi-factor authentication, where you get the text message and stuff, that's a best practice. But as that's matured, used to be text message was sufficient for that MFA. Text messages are no longer secure enough to be there, so they're bringing these apps and things like this. So this is the vision going forward, is this would be the standard for citizen authentication that we would ask agencies to adopt anytime they adjust their applications. Now, I wouldn't go back and say, okay, agencies, you have to modify every one of your applications to do this, because that's a very expensive ask. So what we do is, as they adjust their applications, we say, we would like you to move to this standard for citizen authentication at this point in time. And this is, and this was a strategic decision of what platform to use. This is login.gov that does it, because login.gov it's a federal entity, but it's also used by military, so all veterans will have an existing login with that platform, which they can then use that same login to access state services now and things like that. The other benefit that I see I didn't really realize this up front was post offices are set up to be able to help people to get this account set up. So citizens can go into a post office, say, hey, I need help with this, and that'll help them get those accounts set up and authorized, because it's not, you can set it up and you say, hey, my name is Jeff Kleins, here's who I am, and so they'll authenticate that identity and stuff as well. So.
I'm going to make a comment here. We recently had the Department of Revenue open up the login for people to notify them that they are owner occupied, which is going to affect their 25% off their property tax in the next year. And I'd like to know what logon system that was, because it was a disaster on day one. So I get worried when you say it's a government login program, because I go back to Obamacare's rollout and I get concerned. But I'm sure there's good reason to go down this path. So, let's keep in mind what's already happening out there. I'm going to assume, based on this being a new technology, a new ask, that Department of Revenue was not using this login, this capability.
No, they were not, Mr. Chair. And I will say we have had other agencies already express interest in that. Retirement has already expressed interest in seeing how they could look at modifying their system, because they recognize the elevated security that's without their solution.
Yep. All right. Representative Harold, follow.
Thank you. Follow up. Yeah. So thanks for that explanation. That did help, and I appreciate that. Is it an option, or is it a requirement? Do you see what I'm saying? So the theory sounds great, but is it a situation like Department of Revenue? Did they have that system already in place and they chose to just continue down that road with that system, or was that through that legislation last year, did that system get birthed? And I'm just trying to figure out, is it a situation where we're giving agencies the option, or is it kind of a deal of, hey, this is the direction we're moving as a state. We've spent the money, we've got a good system, it's going to bring us all onto the same page, and is that an option?
Mr. Chair. So to answer the question, the system was not in place when Revenue went live. So this is just in the last few months that it went live with DOT. So it was not available to use at any other things. Now, when I say a standard and stuff, my strong recommendation, this goes back to my desire to have those relationships with the agencies to say, this is the value of doing this type of stuff. I can strongly advise agencies to do this. The agencies, it's always going to be a case by case. If you have a very popular, well-used system and then you tell every user, sorry, you have to recreate your user account and stuff, it's a burden on those citizens. And so it's an intentional conversation we need to have with every agency every time we do this, to say, how can we support you to do this and things like that. So it's a conversation I want to have, and this goes back to the ETS standards. I think ETS establishes standards, and that agencies then, we are establishing, I always like to say, we're establishing Wyoming state technology standards, not ETS standards type of stuff. And then if an agency needs to exempt themselves or go away from those standards, it's an intentional conversation between that agency director and myself to say what makes sense for the state. And then we usually, every time I have those conversations, it's usually like, let's work towards that. And they're supportive of that, but it's usually a fairly long roadmap to be able to get them to that level.
Go ahead with the follow-up, Representative Harold.
Thank you very much. And then just one more follow-up, and this can just simply be a yes or no. We got a maintenance agreement of $620,000. I'd assume that's somewhat of an entry level on this program. Is it going to change? Say we have one agency using it right now, but then we got 20 agencies using it next year. Are we going to see a return conversation and ask for more funding because that changes as a sliding scale with more use?
Thank you, Mr. Great question. So no, we designed and architected this. It's a consumption-based licensing, meaning it's a fraction of a penny every time somebody logs in to be able to use those services. And so we would be billed by the federal government for that consumption. This 620,000 represents if we were able to get every citizen in the state of Wyoming with an account and using it on a regular basis, this would be the total cost. The other thing to note there's, if this appropriation goes through, this is one of those things where it could be up to this, but it wouldn't be over that. So we may not spend this full $620,000. We would, it's kind of one of those, we deposit money in there, we pay a bill of, let's say $20,000, and then they charge against that until we get to a level, and then we pay another bill and things like that. So the actual consumption for the first year would be lower. It could be, but we asked for this money because we're hoping for a lot of adoption and utilization of this platform. So this really represents the worst case scenario of everybody having a login and everybody using it.
Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Quick question, kind of all the eggs in one basket concept. It sounds to me like this program would develop a profile for each individual that interfaces with the government regardless of the agency. Does that cause some concern for identity theft?
Mr. Chair.
Director?
Yes, so thank you for that. So having a centralized identity always has a concern. Is that going to be, in the technical world, we call it the honeypot. That's what attackers are going after type of stuff. The way that the federal government has architected is they have multiple industry partners. So they're not actually doing a lot of work. They partner with industry experts. They're the for-profit companies that do it, and then they kind of facilitate that. So there's a diversified back end also that does that, and then the layers of security that they've built within the application give us a very good level of security. This is not going to be an attack surface that'll be exploited easily.
All right, please continue, Ms. Burkhart.
All right. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll turn your attention to page 28, where you're going to find priority number 10. This is for what we call PCI compliance, or otherwise it's called payment card industry compliance. This request ensures the state meets its statutory obligation to securely process online payments by funding PCI compliance as a core general fund service. To meet these requirements, ETS must use a specialized vendor who provides tools, monitoring, and audits. ETS manages this work centrally so agencies do not each have to purchase their own compliance services. We are requesting $183,200 in general fund to maintain the state's PCI compliance program, which protects citizens' financial information and allows agencies to safely accept credit and debit card payments for licenses, fees, permits, and other services. Having a centralized payment processor that is PCI compliant is required by statute. Yet during some of our initial discoveries that I mentioned during our first priority, when we all came to ETS, we discovered that this was inappropriately budgeted in our internal service fund. So this request, you're going to see a mirror request in Division 3000, removing this $183,200 and putting it into our general fund, because it is technically a core service.
Senator Group.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question, yeah, I know this is another one of those ongoing running gun battles we've had for years. So this system, we're going to be encouraging all of our departments to get onto this system. How have we been talking to folks about that? Because I know we've gone around and around and around about this one for a long time.
Sure. So this one, we are already all on this. We have a standard payment processor with a few exceptions. This is an audit component that we pay a third-party assessor to come in and evaluate ourselves and our stance and our technology to ensure that our structure meets the payment card industry requirements for that data security. So this is just, it was something that we tried to recover by billing back to agencies, and we realized, no, we're doing this for the entire state. It needs to be a core service. So let's generally fund this versus trying to do it. And then going back to the conversation, this is cost recovered through SWICAP then, and so every agency pays their fair share.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Further questions? Director, Senator Larson passed a bill that deals with this type of transaction Do we know if the company that we're dealing with is in compliant with the state law that was passed earlier in regards to gun purchases and tracking gun purchases?
Mr. Chair, so I'll need to get some more detail on what the specific state law is, and then I can follow up and make sure that that company is fully compliant with that law.
Please do. We'd like a report on that
Will do.
the next time we meet. Ms. Burkhart, please continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay, we're gonna turn to page 29, where you're gonna find priority number 12, which is for physical and virtual security regulations and compliance tool. This request gives ETS employees the tools they need to protect the state by automating how we track and report required security and compliance standards across Wyoming's entire technology environment. We are requesting $360,000 in general fund for a centralized tool that continuously monitors compliance for both physical systems, like servers and data centers, and virtual systems such as the cloud services, applications, and networks. Today, ETS must manually gather this information from many different sources, which is time-intensive and increases the risk of missing critical requirements. Automating this work strengthens statewide cybersecurity, improves accuracy, and ensures we stay aligned with mandatory standards like NIST, which is the National Institute of Standards and Technology. It also provides agencies, auditors, and federal partners with reliable, timely information needed to support programs and maintain funding. The governor does recommend this request.
Any questions on priority number 12? Seeing none, please continue.
All right. We're gonna turn to, sorry. We're still on this page. And at the bottom, you'll find priority number 13 for systems maintenance and security tooling. It goes on to the next page as well. This request ensures state employees' computers remain secure, up-to-date, and reliable by renewing the state's Unified Endpoint Management, or the UAM system, which is a subscription-based service requiring annual funding. We are requesting $330,322 in general fund to continue this essential tool that allows ETS to centrally manage every state computer, laptop, server, mobile device, and user account. UAM enables automated security updates, remote problem-solving, encryption, safe software control, and efficient setup for new employees, functions that we cannot perform manually at scale. The additional funding is needed to maintain current licenses, but to also add 2 modules that improve patching and reduce vulnerabilities. The governor does recommend this funding. Very good. I'm going to turn your attention to page 31, where you're going to see priority number 14, which is for GIS standardization. This request supports public safety, ensures agencies have accurate data, and gives employees the tools they need by funding the authoritative map data used statewide, including the critical location information required for Next Gen 911. We are requesting $518,784 in general fund to purchase and maintain the foundational map data that supports emergency call routing, first responder navigation, wildfire and disaster response, transportation planning, public safety mapping, environmental management, and the public-facing maps residents use to access services. Accurate, standardized geospatial data is essential for hundreds of state employees who rely on it every day to make informed decisions, respond quickly to emergencies, and deliver core services that protect communities across Wyoming. The governor does recommend this funding request.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I don't know a whole lot about this, but I think each county has a GIS program, so, and they've paid for that, I think. Maybe, at least I use their, the Park County one quite often. So how does this tie into that? Are they counties gonna be doing that individually anymore, or is the state going to be doing all that work they're doing?
Yeah, Mr. Chair. Senator Larson, thank you for that question. So this is money to purchase a standard GIS structure for the entire state at the county level. So counties do it, but this would be one entire map that would be of the same format, same structure across every county and things like this. So this would be, and this was one of requests that I questioned a little bit when it first came to me, but the ETS does have a statute that says we are to encourage and coordinate the effective use of GIS throughout the state. And so because of that statutory responsibility, I wanted to bring this forward because this would be used by a lot of different agencies, specifically, as I've been told, with Whiteout, with the Next Gen 911 type of structure, to be able to have that that geospatial, information included in that mapping data. So as far as whether the question is, does this replace what the counties do? As we have this data, I don't know if we would legally be allowed to share it with counties or things like that because of that entity, but it'd be something that'd be worth discussing and exploring.
Just to follow up on that, I see here it says ETS intends to partner with the University of Wyoming's Graphic Information Science Center. Now, they've got a new director too. Have you reached out? Have you talked to her?
Mr. Chair, I haven't met the new director out of the University of Wyoming yet. I do have a GIS team that is very tied in with this community, and they talk on a regular basis with the community. Again, I can't say for sure if my team has talked to the new director out there or not.
Thank you.
Follow up that I skipped there.
Yeah, I could.
We're in a cage fight here, so you gotta be quick.
Yeah, I got to keep at it, don't I?
You can get hurt.
You referred to the, what do I want to say? YDOT, our security there. The 911 numbers mostly go through the county, I think, don't they? And so how is this going to tie into it, I guess? I'm really confused.
Director Klein?
I'd love to have a phone a friend. I don't know the technical structure enough to be able to talk about it off the top of my head, but I can get with the YDOT and their team to get a better, more thorough answer for you, if that would suffice.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I think that is one of my areas to be in contact with, so I'll do the same also.
To Senator Larson in the next week or so, would that be?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great, thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Representative Harrelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the GIS conversation came up in committees about, and I apologize, I wish I could give you a little more information, but it's just, it trickled back into the back of my brain. I think it was Corpse, does that sound right? Corpse 2 years ago, maybe? And we had a GIS was a conversation for an interim topics, and we had a lot of conversation around the fact of basically that we had a really inconsistent GIS mapping of the state. And we had municipalities and counties that had different information than the state and the university, and it was this kind of hodgepodge. So I'm definitely interested in this conversation. I'm wondering if this was the byproduct of that. And if you guys could get us, so I'm going to add on to what Senator Larson has asked for and what good chairman's asked for. Can you also give us just a quick background if this is the byproduct of what we did in committee a couple years back, and if this is a fix or more dirt in the water? Because there was a lot of dirt in the water a couple years ago, and I think we need some clarification if this is fixing that. And then if we can really get kind of a clear spectrum if this is fixing across the board, maybe some inconsistencies from state to county, or if this is just going to continue to add more layers into that confusion.
Not the Marine, and the mispronunciation of the finality of their name. So if you could please let us know whether this is the outcome of that committee.
Mr. Chair, yes, we will definitely follow up on that. One comment, so this is one of 2 GIS asks, so we'll bring GIS up again. I have a feeling from my understanding of the GIS, there's still a lot of mud in the water. So I will definitely go back and talk to my team about the interim topic and the outputs there and things like that, and I'll educate myself appropriately and communicate back to you.
Thank you. Further questions? Senator Larson?
Mr. Chairman, I don't know if it's a question. Can I go ahead and discuss this some more? If I remember, I thought the last time we discussed this in the legislature was more to go out and actually get the pictures even closer so they could use those. Yeah. So I don't know if this has anything to do with it or not, but we definitely need to know what's going on.
And from my experience on revenue, that was something that took place, and they used that for revenue as far as property taxes, that type of thing, assessments. So I think that's what we're talking about.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
that was the oblique imagery, and that was the outcome of the Alvarez and Marcel study to put that in place so that the Department of Revenue could have a really good photograph, three-dimensional of property so they could assess it properly. That was implemented, and it exists today for the Department of Revenue. So that's one function of the GIS. And then the history of the GIS is that just basically think of this map with layers and who owns each layer, and they want to communicate that layer. That's what ETS is trying to establish, is the ability to have a map that is supported by the local governments and reflects what the local government's data is. So just think of just layers. You just stack layers on. You got a road layer, you got a property tax layer, whatever layer that you want, oil and gas, diamonds, what have you. So the mission is simply to get the GIS layers and everybody in agreement that this is the map for the state of Wyoming, everybody. So that's what the mission has been.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I use GIS constantly, and I often go to other counties, and it's very confusing to try to learn their system, so I can understand that. I think it's, as was Mr. Hibbard just pointed out, the various layers are fascinating, but I have to also wonder about the security of that. Who owns various layers, which layers are available to the public, because you can go on there and know exactly where vulnerable places in utility systems are. Everything is on there. So how do we make something available to the agencies that have a legitimate use for it and not make that more vulnerable?
Director Klein?
Mr. Chair. So my answer to that, I completely agree with you, would be appropriate governance of the data. And so there's definitely going to be a public use of mapping data that could be used for a lot of different things out there, but there's also a security component to it. My dream for around GIS would be able to have shared mapping data across the state. We did a little bit of this in South Dakota. If you go to like gis.sd.gov, you can see all the shared GIS maps and mapping data that's available to the public type of stuff. And we have identified different owners, YDOT, obviously is going to be the subject matter expert for all road and mapping information there, and they use GIS extensively. Game and Fish, they're going to have GIS around hunting lots, and there's a lot of mapping data. But if, like the director ever said, it's all layers, and so as we can know what's publicly appropriate to share and what has that sensitive, secure information, that we can hold it back and properly secure that access to that.
Follow-up? Okay. Further questions on this priority? Ms. Burkhart, were you finished with this priority?
I am, if you
Okay.
are.
Please
Thanks.
go on.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to turn your attention to page 32 for priority number 15. This is what we are titled ADA compliance. This request ensures the state meets its responsibility to provide equal access to online services by building a statewide ADA digital accessibility framework. ETS is requesting $5,261,934 in general fund to assess and remediate accessibility barriers on citizen-facing websites and applications managed by the state, so that citizens with disabilities who use screen readers, keyboard navigation, captions, and other assistive tools can fully access public services. As more services move online, ADA compliance has become a mandatory requirement. It's a federal law, and new rules that were issued in April of 2024 increased the state's legal obligation to ensure digital accessibility. A coordinated approach, which has been led by ETS, improves that accessibility, strengthens compliance, reduces risks, and ensures Wyoming is serving all citizens fairly. The governor does recommend approval of this request.
Okay, any questions on priority number 15? Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This one, of all of the exceptions, jumped out at me. It seems to me like virtually every software system out there is inherently ADA compliant. Could you help me out to understand how this is necessary?
Director Klein?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, good question. So, the ADA compliance, especially for the technology, has been a standard for a long time. Department of Justice issued their ruling in 2024, says state websites and stuff now are legally obligated to comply with that as well. A lot of the websites that have been developed in some of the legacy software do not meet the full ADA compliance mandate. Some of the websites can be as low as 40% compliance, some more. And this is an assessment measure that does change and grow as any other compliance measure would as well. It has not been a standard in the ETS development portfolio that we developed to the standard until now. And so that's why a lot of those state websites, and this covers the things that ETS has developed and done. This is remediation for not having that as part of our standard development practice over the last decade.
Follow-up? Further questions on this priority? I do fear, Director Klein, that our versions of, or 2 copies of WordPerfect may not pass the ADA compliance thing. That this could create a great conflict, I'm sure, so. All right, Representative Sherwood, I've opened the door for you.
Thank you so much. I think this is a really important request. It is a federal requirement, and we want to make sure that all of our citizens have equal access to our services. I'm curious on the cost estimate. Is this a known how many of our state websites are not in compliance? And then the cost estimate is based on that. And then in terms of it being an ongoing cost, is that for a continual audit to make sure that those websites, once updated, stay in compliance? Thank you.
Mr. Chair. I wish I could say that this was an exact that. As far as having an exact inventory of what our compliance posture is, which websites are out of compliance and stuff, we do not have that fully baked out at this point in time. We still have a lot of maturity to go to be able to gather that. The cost estimates, and I'll kind of defer to my financial team that can back into how we do it, but the second part of your question, you nailed it exactly. The ongoing aspect of this is our initial estimates was, far above the $5 million to fully remediate this with a known scope of what we have. So this is going to be a long-term thing, but it is the staffing time, because this is one of those the build for services. So our app dev team is build for, so this would give us the resources to have our team focused, because this would give us a resource to have them bill against versus just nothing to bill against to be able to accomplish this, and give us some resources to augment that team so we could get compliance faster, because our current app dev team has a lot on their plate, a lot of roadmap stuff, and we wouldn't be able to accomplish this internally with just the internal resources. It gives us a little bit more flexibility. So do you want to talk about how the methodology came up with that number?
Yeah, so we did some extensive analysis on this, Mr. Chairman, sorry. We've decided that, this is going to get everything remediated. We're estimating 5 to 6 years to get everything remediated at this point. From there on, why it's being requested as ongoing, we anticipate there will be a high level of maintenance effort to keep those ADA compliant websites going forward, and any changes that may happen in the future. We're estimating, like Director Klein said, of using a resource augmentation program. We anticipate that we'll need about 12 developers over the 12-year, or over the 2-year biennium at 2,080 hours each. We used $105 average cost that we use currently for some of our resource augmentation work, which gets you to that $5.2 million.
Thank you for that clarification. And then in terms of that maintenance period going forward, would you have a standard best practice on, similar to like, we recommend every so many years you're replacing your laptops, that it would be every so years there's an audit? Do you have like a cycle laid out for that maintenance?
Mr. Chair. So yeah, rather than ever so often to the audit, it would be a continual monitoring aspect. So we would put programs, processes in place to be able to monitor. They're very excited. And for those online, there's some cheering and some applause from the hall for our comments. So they're really excited about ADA compliance too. But it would be a continual monitoring and continual remediation. So it wouldn't be an audit every couple of years. We would continually monitor, make sure that if anything pops up, it's addressed immediately, or if the compliance posture changes, we would then be able to go in and make any necessary changes to every website.
It seems to me like, a regulation like the ADA would be included in what we're paying for in this other issue, number 12.
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Can you explain that?
Yeah, so the number 12 talks more about like our federally mandated compliance like HIPAA, FERPA, FIPS types of compliance. Those that we have to comply with different federal mandates there. This monitors our environments for the technical compliances for that as well. So that the tools that we're looking at for ADA compliance do not fit within that. So they're both for compliance posture, but they have two different type of focuses there. The tool sets we've been looking at don't have an ADA compliance to monitor for websites, and where the other one focuses more on the security configuration, the HIPAA configurations on servers, things to that effect. So similar, but kind of a different structure. Does that answer your question?
Yes, Senator Drew.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, that's a big number for an ongoing request. And especially when you testify that we don't really know what we don't know in compliance with all this. So here's my question. 5.261 is a one-time request, and then you were to come back and say, okay, this is where we got with this, and this is where we think where we have left to go. Or we all aspire, and we all, it goes without question, we all want to comply with the ADA. It's mandated, and we know we need to, and that's great. If we went with a smaller number as an ongoing request, and then once again honed in and refined on that, which of the two would be the better play?
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
I think your points are very fair, Senator Drew, and I think your first option it's fair and appropriate. You do the one time and then come back and say, here's what we found, here's what the ongoing. I think that would be an appropriate approach to take this.
Follow up? Okay. Yes, Representative Sherwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the spirit of enthusiasm, in our grants office, the enthusiasm that was in front of us yesterday, and then the children, this is totally out of context if you're online, I apologize. Have you made a request to the grants office to see if there would be a grant to help us come into compliance? Because it is a federal mandate, maybe there are some federal funds for this.
Mr. Chairman, I was going to resist to participate any further in this conversation for expeditious purposes. However, this is going to get cost allocated, I will guarantee you. The federal government has an ADA compliance requirement. Therefore, we have the fullest intent to recover the share of this through the statewide cost allocation. ETS and the State Budget Department will be working on that and the method with the Federal Office of Health and Human Services. So the first answer to that question is absolutely, we're going to recover. Second is, sure, we'll put in a technical service request and do exactly that. See if there isn't anything that we can find for us to help that. And that's, right now, my people are in my office looking at this, listening to this. You can guarantee that the technical service request is already launching for this as we speak.
That these will be taken care of by the federal funds.
Mr. Chairman, that is an easy one, all day.
All right, Representative Smith.
Thank you. You talk about 5 to 6 years in order to get into compliance. Are there any federal fees associated or fines or for not being in compliance? And secondly, do you guys have any idea of how many statewide citizens are affected by the use and non-use availability of this?
Director Klein.
Mr. Chair. So, yes, Representative Smith, I shared the same concern as far as a potential legal risk and stuff, given that the Department of Justice mandate was to have it done by, I want to say, April 2026 type of stuff. So we obviously won't have full compliance. Because of that concerns, I did go and have conversations with the Attorney General and discussed it with their team. They were not as concerned as I was around the compliance as far as the state's liability for non-compliance with this. You know, it could bring up lawsuits, but that's not something that I was told is not a fiscal penalty for non-compliance type of stuff. But they also gave us very good guidance as far as saying, make sure that your priority and your plans are well documented, because those could be used in any lawsuits, and also focus first on anything that is non-ADA compliance that citizen would use to apply for or get services. And so between that approach and that strategy, which is very much so adopted, we minimize any sort of legal risk there. And then the second part of your question, because I don't have that full inventory and scope of things, I can't tell you exactly what that risk level is at this point in time.
Ms. Smith. Okay, any further questions on this priority?
Mr. Chairman.
Representative Harrelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, question, there's ADA requests coming from DEQ as well as the Livestock Board. Can you talk a little bit towards that, and maybe is there an umbrella here that could all come together, or we're seeing multiple requests for money, obviously not this large?
Yeah, I can take that, and it looks like Director Hibbert has something as well. So this request was primarily driven for the sites and systems applications that have done through ETS over the years. Agencies have gone through third parties to build websites and stuff like that. We didn't want to try to scope third-party compliance and stuff. This was based on our remediation of stuff. So we partnered with agencies and says, if you have a third-party system, you know, hosted by a vendor or something else that's non-compliant, we recommend, we ask them to go and assess it, which this is what generated those other things, but the thing says, would those vendors be able to become compliant at their own cost because of different contractual language and stuff like that? They're evaluating that with those. And so agencies would bring their own ask to bring their systems and compliances with this if they're hosted and managed by a third party. So Director Hibbert.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Representative Harrelson, that was an exact question the State Budget Department asked in the development of this budget. Is this duplicative? And the answer to that is no. These initiatives that have already began in these other agencies will continue on. They're not duplicative. We're not funding it twice. But that question was the same one we asked.
Further questions on this directive, this priority? Seeing none, we've gone long for a break. I do have a question. Do we have an event with the children today? I remember there was some
It's a
conversation
tree lighting
about.
ceremony.
I'm sorry?
It was a tree lighting ceremony.
And we missed it probably,
10:30.
huh? Okay, all right, so we missed the tree lighting ceremony. So be sure you all take a look at that. Let's take a quick break. How much how many more priorities do we need to go over? 5 of them. Okay. And then I want to have some time for the committee, if you have questions of any of the budget that is not a priority. And so be prepared to ask those when we're done with the priorities. We'll take a 10-minute break right now.
support smarter purchasing. This investment gives employees the essential tools they need to quickly resolve issues, protect technology resources, and ensure citizens continue receiving secure, reliable digital services. The governor does recommend approval of this funding request.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm wondering if we were talking a little bit about like stranded licenses and something not being utilized, is the ability to monitor usage translate to then knowing when there's an asset we're paying for, but then is no longer being accessed or used by a state employee? Thank you.
Mr. Chair, yes, great question. So that is the software asset management component, and it's a two-part thing. So we have the UEM software that monitors what's installed on different things, and then this would record the actual licenses. So we could say, okay, what stranded licenses do we have there? Are we paying for things that aren't being used and stuff? So this is a key component in having that software asset management to identify that. And it's also a compliance thing to make sure that we're installing only things that we're licensed, properly licensed for, and things like that. So having a database that tracks this, the software asset management is critical doing this. Looking at what we have installed, we have about 40,000 different softwares installed within the state environment. You can imagine trying to track all those licenses is enormously complex for ourselves. So if we can have a centralized tool then partner with agencies to track all that licensing, it gives me a much warmer, fuzzy feeling to make sure that I could answer any questions around software licensing, utilization, things like that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is a new program, I take it as an exception request. Do we have an estimate of an ROI? How much are we going to save cleaning up obsolete software?
Yeah, Mr. Chair. So it is expanding onto an existing platform. So this is our ServiceNow platform. That's kind of core. So we're adding modules, the PSDS public sector. So that's an environment where we can build things externally facing with agencies, things like the PLB, licensing board, building things in there and stuff like that, similar where we can build things. And this is one where it's a platform as a service. We can build things in there, and then the back end is kept up to date. ADA compliance, browser security, browser compliance, that we kind of, with this kind of outsourced to a third party, saying you make sure we keep everything so we can focus on the business processes and improving the business stuff, so we're not so much worried about the back end. This also adds a module, as we just talked about with Representative Sherwood, about software asset management. We have hardware asset management in this, and this would give us the second component of that to be able to track software licenses and things like that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to clarify then, the SAM portion of this is something new that we don't currently have any type of a system that does this?
Mr. Chair.
Director?
There's some spreadsheets.
Spreadsheets. There's your answer. Spreadsheets.
Is that Microsoft or Google?
A little bit of both.
Senator Larson.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Larson, get you in. More.
or MS-DOS.
What's that?
I said or MS-DOS.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. So is this internally on everybody's computer, or is it something you do from the back end? And is it contracted? Got to have more FTEs? I mean, it sounds like you're doing more, and so you're going to have more FTEs.
Director. Mr. Chair, so no, this is a third-party solution, ServiceNow, one of the industry leading. So we do this because so we don't have to have additional FTE. So we're building onto an existing platform that we already manage different things in, rather than having another solution and stuff. We try to consolidate as many of the tool sets so we can limit the number of application administrators we need to run the business. So no new FTE needed to run this, to administer it.
Follow up? All right. Further questions on this priority? Seeing none, please continue.
Thank you,
Ms.
Mr.
Burkhart.
Chairman. Our next priority is actually on page 34, it's priority number 2. It's for our TRP. So I think we're going to be talking about that after lunch. So we'll just skip over that for now. But you should know. Oh, sorry.
That we are going to move TRP on our schedule from 10:45. We've blown that out of the water. So that will occur at 1 o'clock, and we'll get to A&I, Department of Administration and Information, agency number 6, after we're done with TRP. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So with that, that concludes Division 1000's exception request. So we're going to move into Division 3000, which starts on page 43. Director Kleins gave you a little background on that. These are where all of our rated services are billed out to agencies. You see those on the 400 series within the agency's budgets. We also have direct bill agencies in here, so we'll speak to that briefly. The first request is actually on, it's priority number 1, and it's on page 46. And this is the internal service fund portion of the position alignment. And that is to decrease the internal service fund by $1,063,574. And so we already spoke to that at length this morning. So unless there's questions, I can continue forward.
Any questions? Representative Sherwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's my understanding we might be missing a number on page 45. In the expenditures unit, the 3001, sorry, under the 2728, 1.89 million that's referenced on page 54. Is that, I think that may be missing from that expenditure unit. And Director Hibbard maybe is best to answer this question. Is this, one, is that correct, that that number is missing? And is that contributing to the financial issues in terms of insufficient internal service funds, and then thus the request for general funds?
Director Hibbard.
Mr. Chairman, no. This is an accounting function of just putting the funding in the correct place. So what's taking place now is that amount of money is being billed by ETS to the participants that have received those services. ETS did the analytics that said that shouldn't really be a individual service or an IT 400 series service. It should be a shared service and moved over to the general fund. And once it's moved to the general fund, then the state budget department collects that in the statewide cost allocation. So this transaction simply is moving it from in just a black and white terms. Currently, ETS is sending the bill out and getting reimbursed. In the future, the state budget department will be sending the bill out and getting reimbursed.
Okay. With that, Mr. Director, oh my gosh. Mr. Chairman, I will now direct you to priority number 3, which is on page 48. And we already spoke about this one this morning as well. This is for that digital communications platform hosting fee. What we talked about this morning was the general fund piece of that, and that's for the platform and email portion of that service. This is in our internal service fund for the actual consumption of text messages. So those text messages that those agencies that utilize it, those 30 agencies, when they send out those text message alerts, we bill for that, and this is that portion of that request. And we'll stand for any questions.
Any questions on this priority? Priority number 3. Seeing none, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're going to move on to priority number 4, which can be found on page 49. This is for cloud services. This request ensures agencies have the modern technology tools they need to serve Wyoming by supporting the state's centralized use of cloud services. ETS is requesting $1,497,475 in internal service fund spending authority so that agencies can securely rent computing power, storage, and digital tools from virtual data centers without having to build or maintain their own infrastructure. This allows agencies to deploy applications quickly, scale resources as needed, reduce costs, and maintain strong security and compliance protections for sensitive information. The governor does recommend this funding request.
Just want to clarify for the public that this is cloud services, not cloud seeding.
This is
So if you have any questions about the difference, please give us a call. Any questions on this priority? All right, seeing none, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to direct your attention to page 50, where you're going to see priority number 10, which we also talked about this morning. That's for that PCI compliance, where we were asking that we move that funding out of our internal service fund where it is inappropriately budgeted currently and move it into the general fund. This piece is moving that money out of the internal service fund. And I'll stand for any questions.
Any questions on this priority? Seeing none, please proceed.
Perfect. Mr. Chairman, please turn your attention to page 51 for priority number 11. This is for communications and network support services. This request ensures every state employee can stay connected and serve the public effectively by maintaining the essential communication infrastructure that agencies rely on daily. We are requesting $1 million in spending authority to continue our partnership with a vendor that supports statewide phone systems, low voltage cabling in state buildings, and on-site troubleshooting for critical network issues. These services keep calls flowing, devices connected, and operations running smoothly across every agency. When communication systems work, employees stay productive and citizens receive timely services. When they fail, outages create immediate disruptions felt statewide. We'll stand for any questions.
Any questions on this priority? I have a question. I mean, this sounds like it's paying for wiring services, hard wiring. How long before we're completely off of hard wiring and don't need it any longer? Is that too vague of a question to ask?
No, Mr. Chair, it's not complete because we do see a lot of industry going to, like wireless only network for the computers. But there's a lot more that goes into this as far as supporting the phone systems and things like that. For our current handset phones and stuff, they're still hardwired, required. We have that need to do wiring. The one thing that this is just other fund authority. This is a potential that we anticipate there may need. We would not spend this if the agencies didn't ask us to, run wiring or build out an office or things like that. This is only an anticipated need of a forecast.
So this might apply to my push-button voting system, making sure that wiring is in place, huh? All right. Any other questions on this priority? Seeing none, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You can turn to page 52, where you're going to find priority number 17, which is for ESRI, or otherwise called, or it's known as the Environmental Systems Research Institute. Oh, boy, y'all. I printed the wrong one.
I didn't talk about this one. This is the GIS licensing. So this is the second GIS ask that we put in there. And this is the other fund. So we have a centralized license for GIS where we hold the license for ETS and 4 other agencies. This gives us the authority to bill those agencies for their license usage of the GIS system. So this is just, that's that authority to bill the agencies.
Thank you.
Thank you. With this kind of consolidation and efficiency, do you project any cost savings overall?
Mr. Chair, we are working on that. So we're working, Esri is changing some of their licensing structures, moving away from concurrent licensing. So we are working with them on contract negotiations and things like that. That may result in, I can't guarantee anything, but that is in the works now that we're looking at. We just signed a 1-year extension to allow us to have more time to negotiate and do more RFP type of activities to make sure that we have the best possible licensing and pricing for what we use.
Follow up? Representative Sherwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think this is just a broader question as we talk about, making structural changes to ETS and continuing to find efficiencies under your, A-team leadership. I'm just wondering if it may be too early to project what reversions you might see in June, right? In terms of where we've said, we think this is going to cost this, and then through negotiations, you find some cost savings. And again, this is a bigger picture of, it'd be interesting to see how many reversions we see this June versus, at the end of next biennium. So maybe just a placeholder for that information.
Director, it's more than interesting. I think that this committee is highly committed to finding government efficiencies. So, any kind of information you bring to this committee would be helpful for your case and for us. Please.
Thank you.
Proceed.
All right, with that, Mr. Chairman, we'll proceed to the last request in this division, which is TRP, which is on page 59, and so we'll just skip over that since we'll be talking about that. So now I'll turn your attention to, it's in Division 3000, it's Unit 3003, which is our direct bill unit, and this is where we have those dedicated staff that are directly working with agencies like WYDOT, Game and Fish, and those agencies. We do have a small request to add $238,203 into the Internal Service Fund for that position alignment. And we talked about that this morning, so unless there's specific questions about those position moves for Unit 3003.
Any follow-up on this unit? Any follow-up questions on this unit? Seeing none? Oh, wait a minute, Representative Harrelson.
Thank you. So maybe less on this conversation, and maybe I should ask this at the end. I just had a couple umbrella questions as I've been sitting here, and congratulations, you guys have probably had one of the biggest so far, right? You guys are coming in with a $15.7 million ask, and I guess there's a couple questions that I have regarding that. First of all, as I was kind of just doing my homework and studying your guys' department, I view it more as a utility, almost like you guys are a utility to help the agencies with their digital platforms and digital work. So my question is, do you believe that that scope is still fully protected and in play, or is there some creep? Because I think it's always hard, because it's easy to sit there and go, hey, this is my job, but there's some creep in that, where I'm trying to fix this problem and I maybe start getting across lines out of that utility and more into that policy. Can you talk a little bit about that? And did I make that clear, kind of the question?
In its scope.
Okay, so that's the scope, are we growing? So I don't believe it's growing, but I can see where you go from there. So my understanding, and so I'll use the GIS as an example type of stuff, where we have a specific statutory responsibility to bring efficiency, effectiveness into the GIS stuff, where we're trying to say, bring these licenses, let's have one enterprise agreement. Agencies still can own their technical environment and things like that. We'll take the administrative burden on dealing with the contractual, the RFP and stuff like that. So I can see from perspectives, is that growing that, taking that responsibility from the agencies? I like to look at it as trying to take some of the technical administrative burden off of the agencies so they can focus more on business impacting work, focusing on doing the stuff that impacts the citizens rather than the back-end administrative stuff. So one of my goals would be to take on my agency as much of that administrative back-end work related to technology stuff, contracts, assisting agencies, because again, RFPs can't be done in a vacuum, but really taking a lot of that technical RFP contract stuff on my agency so that the agencies can focus on the things that really move the needle on the services for the citizens.
Follow-up, Representative Harrelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for that. And I think that's something we always need to watch. Keep that metric there to sit there and go, where's the line? And let's not get too close to it. The second thing is this, as we talk about security and all that goes into security and the fact that we've kind of opened a door in this digital era, right? Threats now are very, very liquid. The concern that I have with that also is in the scope of protecting cyber-wise, do you feel like we've ever come in place where we're breaching rights, maybe constitutional rights, statutory protected rights of either agencies or even more importantly, the citizens of the state? Can you talk a little bit about that? Do you understand? I mean, because really, I mean, the First Amendment rights can be breached if we're not careful in the name of protection.
Yeah.
And what does that look like?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Director, I'm not sure about agency rights, but go ahead and answer that question.
So, yeah, I don't think that we're getting to a point where we're infringing on anything citizen rights. So what we're doing from a cyber perspective is very much so looking at what are called indicators of compromise, meaning is there something in the environment that suggests something inappropriate is happening there? And then we would dive into that. Another way we monitor and stuff for like Citizens Day is we're looking for information that we maintain, like in the dark web, saying, is there any indication that this was compromised and we're now have to go figure out in the cleanup? If we ever found something to that effect, then we would work with the agency that owns that information, who could then make sure there's proper notification to the citizens saying, hey, there's indication of a compromise and stuff. And this is similar to what we see in any industry that was referenced this morning, where there was one industry and then you got to notice, hey, this was a breach and things like that. So it's things that we do. We're not doing a lot of stuff in detail with citizens' data and stuff outside of just monitoring the environments for potential breach. Does that answer the follow-up?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it does, but I also think as you're monitoring, we just needed, my question is, are we being very careful that as you monitor, you're also not at the same time, and I don't want to use the word spying because that's got really bad connotations to it, but we're breaching people's rights. And when I meant agencies' rights, not the agency itself, they're not an entity that has a right, but the people inside of that agency, the people working there, are we protecting their individual rights as we're taking and monitoring is my question.
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Director, go ahead.
So when we're monitoring things, we're not specifically monitoring like, okay, Jeff.Kleins, or, are you emailing this, that stuff? We don't go into the user's mailbox and stuff. What we would look for is for like phishing emails that do come across. If we get a phishing email that, has this indicators and stuff like that, then we go and say how many of those come in there, and then we would quarantine those within those. But that's an administrative thing where we're not logging into the user's email box and stuff to be able to, remove that. There's a administrative backend stuff through Google that allows us to remove and quarantine those messages without violating those users' privacy or expectations for what they have there as well. So hopefully that helps. We do as much as we can to make sure that what the user has is properly managed from a security level to make sure only those that need to know need to have access to that.
Senator Larson.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'm just having troubles with a lot of these things. Let's just take priority 17, ESRI, and you comment that there's, I think I see 4 agencies that you're talking about maybe helping with their functions. So are we gonna, are we double dipping? Are we gonna see some lowering asks in the other agencies for these topics? Because I've got to see those.
So, Mr. Chair, I think this is just, we've historically, ETS has billed the agencies, but we haven't had the other fund authority to bill the agency. So correct me if I'm wrong, this is a correction in the accounting thing to say, we need the specific authority to send a bill to those agencies for their licenses. We pay on behalf of these 5 agencies, ETS, OLSI, the state lands investments and stuff. They still have the money. They get the general fund appropriation. We just pay the bill on behalf of all of them just to streamline that administrative back end.
Follow-up?
Yeah, I think so. So you're really not asking for more money. You're just asking that you can bill them.
Yes.
Director Hibbard, would you like to confirm that from your perspective?
Mr. Chairman, it's interesting, and I can understand Senator Larson's position about seeing the takedown in the other agencies. One of the things that you have to consider is that the Department of Transportation's commission side is not within the budget for the legislative appropriation. Their commission side is the one that pays for their portion of the relationship with Esri and their geographical information system. So you won't see that takedown. So that should be helpful to that point of view. And then, Mr. Chairman, I take a little bit of liberty here and answer two questions and then give some comfortability to Representative Sherwood at the same time. And this will help you with your question too. So if you go to page 58, Representative Sherwood had said, are those statistics in that table incorrectly reported? So if you see on page 58, the 29,250,902, you go to page 54 and you go down to the total funding in column 3, the standard budget, you'll see 29,250,902. That's exactly the same number. The table is predicated on the standard budget. If you go to page 58 and you go to the page 58, you'll see in unit 303, which is Representative Server's previous question, you'll see 9,179,61. You go to page 62 and you go to column 3 and you go to the total expenditure, it's 9,179,61. Those are to the absolute dollar. It's the standard budget that we're speaking to when we're having those tables so that we have a relationship for you funding the standard budget. If they have an exception request, that changes those statistics. So Representative Sherwood, if you go to page 14, her question was, well, is that table correct? Well, the table is correct at the time of the standard budget, but anticipate that we are moving, and this is going to help Senator Larson, is we're going to move $1,190,756 from what I will call the 400 series, the Central Data Services, which ETS does the billing for. We're going to move that to the restrictive services, the 300 series, the exact same amount to the state budget department to bill through the statewide cost allocation. So Representative Larson, thanks for being patient, because you see that $670,000 there in the bottom, and you'll move over there and you'll see that the ETS, in the conversation that we had with Director Kleins, he's got $670,000 that he intends to bill for the enterprise for those services that they render on an enterprise basis. So long story to get there. But if you look at the columns, just on page 14, column other fund, that is 400 series, ETS does the billing for the enterprise. Column general fund is the 300 series, the state budget department. But the last thing I'll say is ETS, like the state auditor's office and the state budget department, is a central service agency. And in one fashion or the other, the costs that they have will be billed either by ETS through their 400 series or by us through the 300 series. So hopefully that helps, with the caveat that the commission, the Game and Fish, for the trails, for the migration trails on the Esri list or the geometrical map, that's paid by the Game and Fish Commission. So you won't see a takedown. You see the roads, you won't see a takedown for that because it's on the commission side. So there's no relationship to the positive and negative, but they will get paid for the energized platform. Somebody has to have the home to run the enterprise platform for geographical information systems. That's now ETS, and it's clear. An earlier question was, are we confident that your scope isn't expanding or contracting, or are you providing the services, getting the support you need? This decision here is to make that happen, to see that, yes, ETS will be in the process of reviewing and maintaining and seeing that everything is taken care of correctly for the geographical information systems for the state of Wyoming. So hopefully that helps.
Follow-up, Senator? Follow-up, Representative Sherwood? Okay, thank you for that explanation. Okay, any other questions on this priority? All right, seeing none?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. All right, we have, we're getting to the end here. There's a TRP request for this unit on page 61. It is a standard request, and we will discuss that later this afternoon. So I'm going to direct your attention to page 71, which now we're going into our Division 5000, which is our school foundation.
Representative Sherwood.
Apologize, in the spirit of going page by page, could we stop on page 66 and talk about that stranded account? Thank you.
Oh, yeah, I skipped that. My apologies. I skipped over that division because we didn't have any exception requests. That division is 4,000. That's our depreciation reserve fund. This is something that we are going to be reviewing in depth during the audit as well. This is a fund that was used in the past when we were buying IT infrastructure, and we would take the depreciation, set it aside, put it in this account so that we could then use it to buy future IT infrastructure. We are now moving away from, as are many state agents, state IT departments, moving away from that sort of structure, since we're moving away from infrastructure to more cloud services. Cloud services are based on subscription-based, and so you can't depreciate those. And so that account is currently not being utilized. We're in the discovery phase of, can we take that money? So that what's in there now was taken from IT infrastructure that was purchased with internal service fund money. So we do have to utilize that on internal service fund expenditures going forward. So we're exploring what our options are and how we can utilize that. And most likely we'll be getting rid of that division going forward.
Okay. Follow-up, Representative Sherwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just going back to the timeline about that audit starting in January, taking a few months. As you guys are our home committee, I hope that then you can keep us apprised.
Absolutely. Yep.
To what you find in this, and hopefully we can find some cost savings by utilizing these funds. Thank you.
Sure, absolutely,
Representative Sherwood's concern about cost savings, so.
absolutely.
Yeah, we're all there. All right, please proceed.
Very good. Okay, if you turn your attention to page 71, this is, again, priority number 1, which is that statewide department-wide position alignment. And this is just adjusting some positions that should be school foundation funded, which currently are not. And so we are requesting an increase of $103,200 in the school foundation. And with that, we'll stand for any questions on that one.
Questions on this priority? Seeing none?
Very
please proceed.
good. You can turn your attention to page 72, where you're going to find our priority number 5, which is circuit costs for the Wyoming Equality Network for Education. This priority is essential to ensuring that Wyoming schools have the reliable connectivity they need every day. ETS is requesting $170,480 in spending authority to maintain the network and telecommunication circuits that act as the digital highways for our schools for carrying their internet, phone, and video traffic that supports teaching, learning, and daily operations. Just like physical roads require ongoing maintenance to stay safe and functional, these circuits must be properly supported so that classrooms can access online tools, administrators can communicate, and our ETS staff can respond quickly without burdened, preventable outages. Supporting this request ensures schools remain connected and our employees can do their jobs effectively. With that, Mr. Chairman?
Okay, any questions on this priority? I have a question. Are we duplicating anything here where the schools individually are providing these services, or is this specifically something that your department is in charge of?
Mr. Chair, so this is something for the K-12 schools and stuff we are uniquely in charge of. The only duplication that I'm aware of is this also includes the community colleges, and some of the community colleges have a secondary internet circuit that they primarily use for like dorms and things like that, that they don't want to impact their primary circuit bandwidth and have a service degradation, so they have a secondary one for that ancillary utilization and backup stuff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our last request is also TRP that can be found on page 73, and so we'll talk about that a little later. So with that, we conclude our presentation for our exception requests. As you've asked other agencies the last few days, I will let you know that our total request is for $15.7 million. Each request we presented supports essential functions of state government. They're not about adding new programs or growing government. They're about protecting the systems our employees rely on daily and ensuring that every agency can continue serving Wyoming citizens safely and effectively. And with that, we'll stand for any further questions.
All right, this is our opportunity to approach anything other than those priorities. Representative Sherwood already grabbed one of them. Thank you. So is there any others? Representative Alaman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Kleins, I understand you have right around 84 employees working remotely on a full-time or part-time basis. Is that correct?
Yes, yes, sir, that sounds about right. Do you have the telework? And we can validate numbers, but if you get that from the telework, then yeah, that's correct.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How do you go about checking the productivity of these workers? I understand that you've had some problems because you're in a fairly old building and you've had to evacuate a couple times from no electricity, no air conditioning, or the air conditioner is putting out fumes. But how do you ensure the productivity for the people of Wyoming?
Mr. Chair, great question, and this is a challenge that has been around for a long time for all, technical remote work. When we have a lot of these, a lot of these positions that are working remotely, there are specific things they have to do. I'll use an application developer as an example. We have several of those that work remotely full time, whereas the output of their work, because it's an internal service fund, we bill the agencies, so we have a very detailed number of how many hours they're working on this, and then we see the output of that work through the actual physical code that they're developing for whatever project. So we have managers and stuff that understand, here's what should be developed, and then make sure they're monitoring that to make sure that we're getting the level of output that we expect from those employees. Now, I will say I've worked in a remote thing for a long time, and that's a unique skill set every manager needs to have. So we focus and make sure that our managers understand how to manage in a virtual team, meaning a team that's spread across different locations, and they don't see everybody day in and day out. So it's something that you have to intentionally do to make sure that that's managed. They're showing up on time, they're doing things, they're working and things like that. So I appreciate the question tremendously, and hopefully that answers your question.
Follow-up? Representative Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do you have many problems? Are there many people who don't do their work and you have to let them go, or are your managers pretty much in control of all this?
Director.
So from what I see, I think our managers are pretty in good control of it to make sure that we get the level of output that we will. So I'm not saying we've never had any problems, but in the last year that I've been here, we haven't had to terminate anybody for lack of work or actually producing things. I don't know, maybe, for long-term, if that's ever been an ETS problem.
Ms. Legursky?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Alaman, I don't know that that has been a problem in the past, but I think that what the director had said is one of those things with the way that our staff works. We have a lot of staff that's across the state, so even if they weren't teleworking, they would be in different locations. And we have, for example, a manager who is in Powell who also supervises individuals who are in Casper. So we already have that type of remote work, if you will, where those supervisors have had to manage their employees who are in different parts of the state. And so just using that expertise that we had in managing those, we've used that with that telework as well. I don't know if that answers that question.
All right, further questions for the agency? All right, seeing none, Mr. Richards, are we set to go ahead and take a lunch break now and then come back and do TRP afterwards?
Yes, you are, and you
Okay.
can take as long as you wish.
I think I'd like to have us return it at 1:30, and that way, if there is some extra time needed, we've got an extra 15 minutes. Does that sound okay to the committee? Okay, we'll adjourn for lunch, and we'll be back at 1:30 to do TRP. Agencies